Public schools are required to provide a free and appropriate education for all children. Often, our students with ASD who have high IQs and do well academically fail when they are faced with the unstructured complexity of the world beyond high school. Asperger's syndrome is an autism spectrum disorder first introduced to the United States in 1994 in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual No. 4. ASD across the spectrum is a lifelong developmental disability that continues into adulthood, creating lifelong challenges.
You know, like people like my Taekwondo instructor, Grandmaster Griffin, I feel like I can tell him everything because he's very good with people like me, even if he doesn't know it. And then there's people like this special education teacher that I actually go to once a week, Miss Lipe, who is more suited for low-functioning autism. I feel, oh my goodness, why do I have this? I'm just terrified. And there really is a difference between high-functioning and low-functioning autism, and I just wish people knew that.
I feel I was told, later than I should have with, when I had autism. I didn't know I had autism until like 4th grade, and I was apparently diagnosed with some form of it in preschool. And so I kind of went to elementary school was kind of the hardest point for me. It was the most pain, the most failures and stuff like that. I took a psychology class where my psychology professor didn't even know really what Asperger's is, and yet he was going on to say how it's not really a real thing.
Developmental challenges associated with ASD include problems of social understanding and problem solving, as well as basic organizational skills needed to function independently at work and in the community. Today, 20 years after being introduced to the United States, the specific label of Asperger's syndrome has been absorbed into the autism spectrum disorders category in the DSM-5. IDEA ensures that every student receives a free and appropriate education based on their individual educational needs. This requirement stops when the student leaves public school. Under the Adults with Disabilities Act, certain accommodations can be made in universities and in the workplace, but these supports are limited and only occur when the individual discloses his disability and advocates for himself. This requires specific self-advocacy skills that need to be directly taught prior to the student leaving the K-12 system.
Going to college has really helped me with my advocating because once you get into college, I found that in order to get the services that I currently had, I had to disclose myself to the Office for Students with Disabilities, and now every year before the start of the semester, I email all of my professors with a template that I got from my social worker that talks about me, my challenges, and more about autism so that they really know what they're getting into and so they can better help me.
Well, I was diagnosed when I was 14, and it was kind of confusing at first for me, mostly because of the fact that my sister was diagnosed like way before me, and of course she's on kind of the other side of the spectrum, so I was confused about how could I be on the spectrum. I didn't really understand, and then as I learned more about it, it's really helped me understand myself more.
The transition from a structured school environment to the uncertainty and complexity of adulthood can be particularly difficult for individuals with ASD. Transitions for all students typically include completing school, gaining employment, going to a college or university, contributing to a household, participating in a social community, and experiencing social relationships. Research indicates that students with ASD lack the executive skills needed to negotiate the complexity of daily life, despite high IQ or academic achievement in high school.
I don't need the academic help. I need the social and emotional help. But they didn't provide it because they didn't know how to deal with it.
I'm thinking Okay, yeah, we might have higher IQs, but we don't have so much common sense. We kind of squash it back into something a bit more kind of complete. I'd sacrifice intelligence for more kind of sense of what's going on in the world.
We, as educators and educational systems, need to take another look at what an appropriate education means for a student with ASD. In this video, we specifically address students with ASD who have average to above average IQs and who are capable of taking on challenging academic work. For the making of this film, the writers reviewed 8 journal articles focused on adult outcomes for people with ASD, all published after 2006, more than 10 years after the introduction of Asperger's syndrome to the United States. The writers also consulted with 2 leading authorities on college students with ASD, Dr. Jane Thierfield Brown and Mitch Nagler. 4 common conclusions include: there are disproportionately high levels of anxiety and depression in adults with ASD. The majority of adults with ASD do not live independently and often have few personal relationships outside of the family. The lack of executive functioning skills is one of the leading causes of failure in the university setting. And there is a higher than typical unemployment rate for adults with ASD despite IQ or level of education completed. This information does and should cause schools to take a critical look at how they are programming for students with ASD who, despite their academic success, are at risk in adulthood. Daniel Goleman, author of The Brain and Emotional Intelligence, writes that many brilliant students who ace the SAT and achieve a perfect grade point average sometimes flunk at life. It turns out self-awareness, social awareness, meaningful relationships, and self-management are equally important, if not more so, than traditional IQ in achieving success in adulthood. There are disproportionately high levels of anxiety and depression in adults with ASD. Chronic stress and anxiety exacerbates an already compromised emotional regulation system. More than any other issue, a loss of emotional control can lead to the exclusion from school, community, and work environments. Our brain helps us to manage emotions, and the brain can be exercised, trained, and toned, like any other muscle. Relaxation, mindfulness, and meditation can help to exercise the brain circuitry needed to manage stressful life situations.
I suppose somebody mentioned it's a cliche that I've just heard in this room, the social cognitive piece which is missing from the brain.
And Grandmaster Griffin has just been a wonderful person to me. And right now I'm one belt away from black belt in Taekwondo, so I'm really excited about that. But we've been going to him for years without disclosing, and it didn't seem to matter once we did disclose.
Certainly, systematic training in relaxation is warranted for students who have difficulty understanding and regulating emotions.
I mean, I need time in my day to pet my cat. I need time in my day to go online and play my favorite MMORPGs and stuff like that.
I've always thought that an exercise routine has helped me greatly in a sport of any kind, physical sports of any kind.
Because I feel like I'm being babied, and I don't need that. I just need time to relax a little bit more than more normal people. And is that so much more to ask for?
No. Adults with ASD often have few personal relationships outside the family. Research informs us that friendships play an important role in the development of emotional understanding, flexible thinking, and social resiliency.
And as far as friends go, like in elementary school, I was pretty oblivious to everything. I was just kind of putting myself out there. But once I hit middle school, it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, people are just kind of ignoring me, and they're kind of trying to avoid me. And it was hard on me because I didn't understand why. And I became the very quiet person, and it was hard on me because I like people. I I very much was a people person and would love to have a gajillion friends.
Problems of social understanding are the most striking characteristic of ASD and can lead to multiple ongoing problems, including extreme vulnerability, healthy sexual choices, loneliness, and depression.
Like, sometimes it's hard for me to say no because I don't like making people upset. Like with the taxi driver, it was a very friendly guy. I guess too friendly now that I think about it. At first, he was just a friendly person, like, and I sat like in the front seat, and we would talk to each other and sometimes joke around. But then, like, after like 2 weeks maybe, because he would drive me Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays to Fraser. About 2 weeks afterwards, he would start putting his hand on my knee, and I wasn't sure what to say, so I just let it go, and it kept going on until finally one day he came to pick me up from school, and I gave my friend a hug, and as we get in the car, the driver's like, "When's it my turn to get a hug?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Oh, come on, you gave him a hug, why can't you give me a hug?" And I was just like, not right now.
Helping a child to find even one truly good friend can lead to the development of social problem-solving skills and emotional resiliency. Making time for structured social training is not always easy, but given the enormous impact this area of development has on future success, it is an effort that needs to be made a priority.
I thought that touching was an appropriate way of trying to make new friends. So when I was in elementary school, I'd go up to other kids on the playground and touch them and sometimes even tickle them because I thought that was how you made friends. But of course, that made a lot of people very angry at me, and I didn't understand why, because I had only learned that touch makes friendships and friendliness arise. And I just completely didn't get that whole talking to people first and then touching them.
Social rules specific to particular situations are often referred to as the hidden curriculum, because most children learn them incidentally. Often educators do not recognize the lack of these critical skills in their students with ASD, and so do not teach them. Breaking these unwritten social rules is commonly cited by university personnel as a reason for student failure. These social rules might concern living in a communal environment, such as a dorm, speaking to a professor about a problem, knowing who to sit with in the cafeteria, and knowing how to go about asking someone for a date. The lack of executive functioning skills is one of the leading causes of failure in the university setting. Experts working with college students cite executive dysfunction as an enormous obstacle to success. Examples of executive functioning skills might include goal setting, handling transitions, getting to class on time, organizing a meal, or handling the steps needed for social problem solving.
It's hard to see people, and as far as the executive functioning piece, it's hard for me to initiate any contact with people I do know.
How to open up bank accounts, what interest means, and, how to get a student loan, how to get scholarships, and, how to set up a calendar for, when the water bill's due, when the electric bill's due, and all sorts of stuff like that. Because I think even normal people need that.
There is a higher than typical unemployment rate for adults with ASD despite IQ or level of education completed. Early job experiences are important for students with ASD. Employment or even volunteer work prior to graduation from high school provides guided practice and generalization of executive skills in a supportive environment.
For myself, I've been volunteering at the Minnesota Zoo for almost 6 years now.
My friend does that.
Lucky.
It's a blast, and I also had to disclose myself once I found out, because I was 12 when I started volunteering. But once I did find out I had Asperger's, I disclosed to the person in charge of volunteering, and she was very understanding and made sure that I had the things that I needed to be able to help out. And then I also volunteer technically, at a dog training facility in Burnsville.
Cool. Nice.
Tails Up Dog Training, and I love it.
As for volunteering, I have spent a few years with the Minnesota Valley Humane Society. I also volunteered at Majestic Hills Riding Stable in Lakeville.
Wow.
And I'm currently volunteering at my grandmother's nursing home, Trinity Terrace, in Farmington. And then the volunteering has really allowed me to work on some independent skills that I may need later in life. They've also helped me get into college, and I particularly like working at Trinity right now because it's allowing me to really talk to and get familiar with communicating with different people.
Work experience offers real-life opportunities to practice effective work habits, time management, and social reasoning. Work is a key element of adult life, and research indicates that when proper supports are in place for adult with ASD, there is a higher job retention rate.
And honestly, I don't think I would have been able to get a job without the work experience program and the skills it taught me. It got me a fast food job, which was terrible, but it was something to start with. I hear they've been cutting a lot of them in a lot of high schools because of budget things, but I really think they need to consider keeping them because it's those kind of programs are invaluable in my experience.
The bottom line of all this is I was never able to work at the level for which I was educated. So all of that was I won't say it was a waste of time, but it was very misguided. They could have just sent me to the regular school. If I'd have been lucky, I'd have got into some kind of an apprenticeship and I'd have had a skill, and I might have been a bit kind of eccentric or whatever, but I might have actually made it through life, just doing that. I didn't need all this educational stuff.
It is tempting to only focus on the academic accomplishments if a student is capable of going to a college or university. It is difficult for both parents and educators to remember that the most essential skills for success in life are often the less academic ones. A high IQ is not particularly helpful if a person does not have the skills needed to regulate his or her own emotions, or recognize and repair social misunderstandings, to get up in the morning and make it to work on time, to navigate public transportation or plan for a term paper, to create meaningful and long-term relationships. In other words, to succeed at life.
Schools shouldn't be so surprised when they see that I have a rubber Kentrosaurus in my pocket, because I do need fidgets, because, my hands will not stay still for a moment. And they shouldn't be so surprised when I put in my iPod during tests, because my reality is very noisy, and once I'm distracted, I will never get back on task. So I use the music to drown out the shuffling of other students' papers or their footsteps and stuff like that.
I look at that list. What happened was when I got
All that stuff in the special education classes.
And you're like, oh,